We have a real family homelessness problem in this country, and Boston ranks number 4. On any given night, about 84% of homeless families are made up of women and children, and about 60% of those families are children.
Domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness on many different levels. For those who leave an abusive situation, emergency shelters, the EA system are filled to the brim.
Many people think people render themselves homeless, but that's rare because moms don't want their children to be in a shelter.
It just takes us to be a lot more thoughtful about how people get to these places.
Just because they don't look homeless doesn't mean they're not. Just because they look all put together doesn't mean they don't need help too.
So one of the things that we find with families who are experiencing homelessness is that they do a really great job of hiding, and almost sometimes hiding in plain sight.
It is such a part of everyday conversation in medicine because, you know, housing is a big issue.
We kind of started noticing since we go to different places every time, and then my sister just randomly asked why we just keep going from place to place. I knew it was because we didn't have a stable place.
They travel like nomads from place to place. And when they arrive at Brookview, they generally come with nothing left except a few black trash bags with their possessions. Brookview is considered a cure for homelessness because we provide a full set of services for both the moms and the children.
They got my kids into school. I couldn't get my kids into school because I wasn't working and I wasn't in school yet.
It is their compassion and their patience and their knowledge that creates a safety net for families every single day.
That environment that they've created for their guests and for their employees is really very much a homecoming.
There's times like today, I still think back to it, and I thank Brookview for being something and helping me out.
Statistics show that about 92% of moms experiencing homelessness have had some type of either physical or sexual violence in their lifetime.
In homelessness, particularly in chronic homelessness, there is intergenerational trauma. And it continues to repeat itself unless people acknowledge and recognize what the impact is.
You know, the fact that you are dependent on someone or something, or you are at the whim of someone or something, even that wears on a person, and it's just not good for you mentally and emotionally or in any other way.
We know that leaving a batterer is one of the greatest risks for lethality.
The thing that makes getting out of domestic violence so difficult is there's no place to go. There's no affordable housing. The domestic violence shelters are always full. The cost of living in Boston is high. The average rent is probably about $1,800 for a 2-bedroom apartment. And if you're only making $12,000 a year, it's hard to pay market rate rent.
We're in this catch because we want to build more, but it's so expensive to build in the city of Boston, and we've got this real conflict between density, this conflict between what's the appropriate size of our housing, and we talk about family housing, 3 bedrooms versus 2 bedrooms versus studio apartments across the city.
The root causes are systemic. Some of it is systemic.
You know, redlining was something that happened back in the 1930s where red lines were actually drawn around certain communities, and it created a barrier to those communities having access to financial services such as mortgages, which is one major way in which people are able to accrue assets and build wealth.
It screams from the rooftops, the families that are experiencing homelessness are our Black and brown families. There's a vast majority of them. It doesn't mean that homelessness doesn't stretch all demographics. It certainly does within the city of Boston, but we do see a much higher percentage of our children who are Black and brown experiencing homelessness.
The gap is getting wider and wider between the haves and the have-nots.
And if you have to make a decision on spending the limited resources you have on feeding your family, keeping your lights on, paying your rent, and spending it on a copay to fill a prescription,
it only takes 1 month to get into trouble and start heading to homelessness.
We have really a crisis, I think, in a lot of ways, even though a lot of folks are coming together trying to figure out solutions, but can we keep up with the demand?
Everybody needs to make a living wage, and we as a society have to come together and figure out how to make that happen.
I truly believe in internal peace, and I do not like the notion of people having to suffer unnecessarily. I think suffering is probably the fastest road to decline in anyone.
Who would want to pack up all your, most immediate things you need, tell your children that you're going into hiding?
It has a powerful emotional effect on both the moms and the children.
People do tend to crawl into themselves and not want to share, not want to reach out for help because of the way people look at you.
Each day for a mom is about where we're going to sleep tonight. That's the thing that's foremost in their mind. Where are me and my children going to sleep tonight?
You have a sick child, you have a sick parent, you have to go to work, you have other mitigating circumstances that being in a shelter isn't going to fit with the other demands of your life.
Well, we talk a lot about creating a stable environment, and we talk a lot about access to healthcare. And when we think about healthcare, we often just think about that physical healthcare. You've got a cold, you want to get your flu shot, a well child or an adult, just annual checkup. That's all very important pieces. But when we have the added stress and the added trauma of homelessness, we need to also make sure that we're providing the mental health services and the mental health support that individuals, children, need.
I've heard stories from pediatricians who also talk about children who did not grow, who were underweight for long periods of time. And one day, they hadn't seen the kid for a while, and when they saw the kid again, all of a sudden the kid had grown and was continuing to do so. And when the pediatrician asked the mother, commented on the child's growth, what's changed in their life, turns out they had gotten housing.
The other trauma for the children is just the trauma of homelessness, just moving from place to place, no consistency in your life, no ability to go to school and have friends come over and hang out and visit.
It would stress me out because on one side I would have school, family, and then our family as a whole. We would often just sit down and not know what to do.
Mom's really depressed about the fact that they can't provide for their children, or they can't even move forward in their own lives because this past life is haunting them.
What I like so much about Brookview House is the way that they do housing stabilization. That is so important because, again, you get to do more than fill a gap.
Shelter is and has been set up as a temporary situation, but for so many of our families, it really becomes a long-term stop.
The difference between Brookview and a regular shelter is Brookview has full apartments. The kids have their own bedroom. Mom has a bedroom, they have their own kitchen, their own bathroom. So they begin to live as they would normally, and they also begin to build community. We have what we call a two-generation approach because it's about moms receiving a full set of services as well as the children receiving a full set of services.
Brookview really provides that stable environment, that loving environment that will take care of you as a mom or a dad, that will take care of the children.
I saw kids getting off the bus. The school bus stops right in front of Brookview House and the kids just running into his home.
And there's also a group of boys. We talk about poetry and express our feelings through writing. I was also introduced to the Above and Beyond program where I met other kids who was also in the same same situation I was facing.
What we provide for the moms on site in our housing is education and training programs. We provide case management.
Tuesdays is self-sustainability, so they've done coding classes where you can learn how to do computer coding. Financial literacy, they do training sessions and different meetings to help us become, self-sustainable.
We provide the children with after-school programs Monday through Saturday. Our whole purpose is to help them see a bigger vision for their life, to have them see themselves at these corporations, because if you're there at 9, 10 years old, it becomes just part of who you think you can be.
What can happen when people thrive? And the self-love that they can develop and the confidence because people believe in them. And sometimes that's just what we need.
We can solve family homelessness if we all come together and put our energy into coming up with a solution. And the solution is affordable housing, education and training, and youth development programs.
My goal is to continue school, and I want to get, like I said, a bachelor's, definitely, or maybe a master's in education.
Our goal is to also get some of our youth into the trades, because that's where you can make living wage jobs, get living wage jobs as well, because college isn't for everybody.
It's amazing to me how industries are now taking an interest in the cost of housing in the city, because that's their workforce. And employers want their workforce to be able to be close by.
Now my family lives in Mattapan. I still visit Brookview, come back. They did so much for me, so I might as well do something back for them.
I want to come back and help other homeless families, help disabled children, help low-income families.
Our main goal is to have them give back to people who have been in their situation, to help them to see that they have something to contribute